Hey Matt, this is a response video to Jean Gebser, the twofold task. Um, First, I just wanted to say, great reading. I didn't actually read the end chapter before I returned to the library. I should just buy the book. But I wanted to mention and ask you a couple questions. Maybe I can get some feedback from you on some of the ideas and reflections that I've been having about Gebser's interval. Um, Particularly, he describes the current worldview, the current structure of consciousness, this uh, rational, three-dimensional oriented structure of perceiving the world as deficient, destructive, deficient. And then he goes on to, as you mentioned in the video, he describes philosophical traditions, sociological traditions, modern traditions that are all destructive. They're no longer, I guess, connected to the vine of truth, so to speak. They've worn out their usefulness, so to speak. So I wanted to bring up the idea that time, as we perceive it chronologically, as Gebser has been mentioning, is a creation. He has a very, very unique sense of time, as you've mentioned and as I've read in his books, as it's an intensity. It's not necessarily an abstraction that doesn't really connect you and root you in the concreteness of time. And I find it interesting that he describes it this way. I don't know, maybe it was because Eastern philosophical traditions hadn't really penetrated or permeated the academic environment in Europe. I don't know. But time as a qualitative intensity, he seems to think this actually generates all of the other structures, all of the other experiences, all the other partial experiences, so to speak, as the origin of those things. And I was thinking about what this meant, because at first it just seemed abstract. And I mean, at least in my experience, I was wondering, well, how do I experience time concretely? What is this elusive concreteness, this invisible origin? What is this? And then it began to make more sense that he was talking about, in his own language, time in the sense of the Eastern philosophical point of view. Again, time as an intensity, and this kind of chronological before, after, etc., etc. In Eastern philosophy, it's almost like a cliche, but they say there is only now. There is no then, there is no after, there is only this. And that intensity, I think, is what he was trying to relate to and describe in all of his writings. This immediacy which originates all other sensations and all other experiences. So time as a qualitative intensity, which generates all the other structures that we originate from, but we seem to lose. We get fixated in other forms, and this sounds very much like, well, time is the ever-present now. Only this moment, only eternity, is the real qualitative time. It sounds like this version of time is paradoxically synonymous with timelessness. Time as we understand it as an abstraction, a chronological order. It doesn't have that. So in a way, it's a rational paradox. Real time is timeless, So I thought this was probably the most insightful part of Gebser's work, because it basically illuminated enlightenment or satori from a Western mind's perspective. The Western mind that is standing at the end of, the rational, very rational, modernistic, I guess, golden age, where that was the only way to think. As it was dying, he seemed to have an illumination into this almost satori enlightenment experience, realizing the origin which generates everything. As they say in Zen, everything is mind. There is nothing else but this. And they say in the Zen koans, you know, even like a frog eating a fly is Zen, and you think like, oh, what does that mean? Everything's perfect. In a way, it kind of means this ever-present origin, this creator of consciousness, of conscious experiencing. And it's very interesting because, what's his name? Thich Nhat Hanh had something similar. He said, enlightenment is the absence of viewpoints. And I was thinking, well, this sounds a lot like Gebser when he says enlightenment is a-perspectival, or not enlightenment, but or integral, his word for it, integral, which is a good as word as any, is a-perspectival. So I think all of these things are synonymous, and I know you mentioned in that Eckhart Tolle reading that I was doing the other week, he sounds very much like this too. The soul is what we find when we drop into this now, and we realize how we are creating and generating this experience of time, generating thought, generating all that is as one coherent whole, time as a whole, and space as a whole, as one. I mean, it's so hard to put into words, but you get what I'm saying. So my question is, if what integral seems to be talking about is rediscovering, basically in a very ancient term, our soul, and rediscovering the ever-present origin which we are generating, and including the sense of I and me and ego and all that. If that's what we're after, if that's what we're searching for, there's plenty of that. And I think this is why he puts this emphasis on spirit and being in truth and so on and so forth. So it all connects. To me, he's talking about an enlightenment experience that transcends the context of East and West. So how can we bring this a-perspectival insight into the world for people who, this is a challenge. This is the question. How can you bring this into the world? How can you express this to more people? Because, some people will look at Gebser and they won't understand what he's talking about. What kind of time is he talking about? What is this? So how do we help, or if we should even at all? And maybe the language that we use can be improved a little bit. Gebser's version of time, I don't know if maybe it will work better for Western philosophers who would approach it better, because he kind of came out from that tradition. So maybe they'll be more receptive to him than, let's say, Buddhist philosophy. But yeah, that's my question. What do you think our task is, if at all? And I know he mentioned a couple things like assist in this originary power and help basically bring it out into the world. So how do we do that? What is the process like? And I know, well, it's tricky, just to throw in my 2 cents at the end of the video. It seems like it's more of a state of mind or an inner state of being which automatically generates and creates the exterior correlative, the inner and the outer as reflective. But the inner state of being is going to reflect the outer state of being. So I think acting in everyday life through this new consciousness, maybe. Okay. Anyway, thanks for your video.